All right, we are back with the DadBods, DadBoss podcast. You may notice I'm not the Asian version, which normally opens this call. So we're missing our good friend Quang. Quang is out and about, traveling around Australia, actually spending some time with the family, with a caravan. And no doubt he'll have some really cool stories about what they've seen and things they've done and the places they've been, because they're out for a little while and going to see so many really, really cool things. So that just leaves myself and Eric. So welcome to the this episode of the DadBods, Dad. Oh my gosh, Dad Boss podcast. See, obviously I don't open this podcast very often, stumbling through it. But Eric, mate, how are you? How was your weekend? What's new over the last week?
Very good, very good. Excited to be here as always. Had a bit of to catch up at work over the weekend, but still family time. We went to the treetop park yesterday. That was actually pretty cool. With Sophia, so nearly 4 years old. She was the youngest there on the course, and she done well. And what I learned is that sometimes we underestimate our kids. I think we were like pretty scared, how is she going there? In the beginning, she didn't know how to do, but the second time, when she was going through the course much better. The fourth time, she was just all doing it by herself, and like she never done something else, which is great. Sometimes I think, oh, we have to help them, support them, be there. But sometimes it's good to just let them do their thing and then prove it to us and to themselves what they're capable of. That was great.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Actually, funny you say that because Ezra's 2 in a couple of weeks, and I just found a new playground just down the road, or not far from down here in Harrington Park. But I took him there yesterday as well, and he was, on those playgrounds they got like the cargo nets or the bridge made out of a cargo net with all the square ropes and everything. And like he didn't want to go across it, so I guided him, much like you did, mate. Guided him across it the first time. Second time, showed him how to do it on his own, and then the third time he was on his own. Like I could sit back and watch. And I even said to Jade, I said, "Oh, maybe we should take him to the treetop park and see what he'd go like there." Because Hamish and I, my older son Hamish and I, we went there a couple of years ago when he was over. So pretty cool, eh? Pretty cool to see them, I guess, face those fears and overcome those fears. So actually, I mean, before we even get into the questions we were going to have today, like, what's your thoughts around helping kids, especially when they're young, as a dad, in order to be able to do something they wouldn't normally do and to face those fears? What's your thinking, or what's your best sort of guidance around that for us as dads?
Mm. I guess it comes about being present and create opportunities and putting them in the right environment for it. Like there's obviously for like younger kids or like toddlers, there's like certain programs. So we went to this baby sensory thing, and when she was 1 or 2 years old, then she done this bit of like soccer thing, or like where they do different activities. Um, and then we went actually out. So I was organizing, okay, let's go out to the Western Sydney Parklands. And then we seen it, and then she was actually wanting to do it. So I guess there's something about creating the opportunities and the environment. That's one. And then when it comes to it, like that's something what I'm learning on the fly as well, where I'm like, I mean, Tiff was a bit more concerned, like myself, I have to say, but just letting her explore and then letting her do it by herself. And I guess that's how we've been raised as well, a bit more like the good old days. Maybe you're a bit older, and you're not that old, but you know, But when I even think about my childhood, it wasn't so overly protected. We just would go out, and then nowadays, it seems to be a bit more hands-on. Parents are more involved and driving their kids everywhere, picking them up, and they're constantly behind them. Where I think, how can we create opportunities for them to just explore and you know um finding their courage and their strength. So I guess it's an awareness piece, and yeah, just being mindful that we are not too much helicopter, what the term is.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. I think about like just with Ezra, I guess, as I guess I didn't think about consciously doing this at the time, but I think to start with, it was about like showing him that it's safe. So while I didn't actually cross the bridge, the rope bridge myself, I actually was there to guide him and step him through it step by step. So I think that's a really key step to helping them when they've got a fear, or when they're going in to do something that they perceive to be a fear or dangerous, or they're not sure about, is really show them that it's safe first, and then be there to support them until they feel confident enough to be able to follow through. And like I said with yesterday, it was really cool to see that just how quickly he transitioned from not even wanting to step out there to now just like completely just embracing it and going. And I mean, the second time he went through on his own, he sort of fell down a bit and got tangled in the ropes and just picked them up and he carried on straight away, which was really cool because rather than letting them suffer or struggle or whatever, it's like pick them back up and keep them moving forward, which I thought was really cool, really, really cool. So it was a great opportunity for them to learn, but probably for us to learn as well, that actually we don't always have to be there. Like you mentioned the helicopter period, we don't always have to be there to oversee them. It's like teach them, show them, teach them, and trust them. I think that'd be a great sort of 3 steps for helping build their own internal self-belief, self-worth, and self-trust. So show them, teach them, trust them, and then if they fall, just recalibrate them, realign them, let them get back on track, show them where they went wrong, and then they'll just learn from that. And I mean, that's probably a great metaphor in everything that we do in life. If you think about maybe starting out with a new employee, if you take on a young employee or something, show them, teach them, and trust them. And then if they make a mistake, just expect there's going to be a mistake, but just recalibrate them and then get them back on track. In fact, I think about one of our mentors talks about, I forget who it was, but they said, show them how to do it. When you teach someone something new, show them how to do it, let them do it, and then get them to show you how to do it, or get them to teach you how to do it. Because when they teach you how to do it, you'll pick up the things that aren't quite working that well. And then obviously in the context of business right now, but you'll pick up the things that they aren't quite doing quite so well, and you just recalibrate them, and then from then they should be good. So a great lesson, I guess a really great lesson there.
I love it. Show them, teach them, trust them, and not just with kids, but also in business, or even in any relationship, I would say. And then something what is said in the beginning, and then we can go to our topic that we had for today. It's something making them feel safe, safe to make mistakes, and then learn. And I really like that asking them to teach it back to us, even with the kids. And I guess that's a typical thing. Hey, you learn something and then repeat it back, which is great point.
Yeah. I like the idea of, if they make a mistake or if they do something silly or stupid, as I say, well, tell me, like, what was your thinking as you were going through that process? Like, what were you thinking? What was the thoughts that you had about why you thought that was a good idea or why you thought that was smart or something like that?
which is so opposite to, let's say, the old school parenting and saying, why the fuck did you do that?
Yeah,
It would be which is similar question, but it's actually the same question but asked in a different way. It's like, hey, what was your thinking behind that? Maybe extract a bit more positive answer and the lesson, but then why the fuck did you do that thing?
Yeah. I think it's the difference between, it's the same question, but one's through curiosity and the other one's through judgment. Like the old way is probably through judgment. And why did you do that? Like straight out judgment. Whereas, hey, I'm curious to know what was the thinking behind that, because then it gets them to reflect on the thinking that they had rather than feeling like they've done something wrong. Like if it comes to judgment, it's like, oh, I'm wrong, and now I have to justify what I've done. It's not about justifying it at all. It's just about getting curious as to what was the thinking behind it. Because when you change the thinking, everything else changes as well. Whereas if you just like berate them or beat them down, they're just going to, they're going to fear you. They're going to be worried about being judged or worry about being wrong again, which I think is a big thing nowadays. Is a lot of kids out there, they're more worried about being wrong than actually giving something a go, because it's wrong to be wrong. We're all taught that it's wrong to be wrong, but it's not. It's probably some of the greatest things in life have come from things being wrong. And if we hadn't been wrong, or if someone hadn't been wrong, they wouldn't have learnt some of the greatest things that we, probably half the technology that we have as well. It's all come from a mistake or from someone failing at something.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, well,
Awesome.
As soon as we're on this topic, we might as well keep going with this topic. We'll save the next topic for next week, eh? What's your thoughts around, especially if we talk more about the kids again, like Sophia and Ezra 2 and 4? Like, what's your thoughts around if they've got a fear that's, like, say they'd tried the jungle gym before or the tree ropes before, and they'd fallen and fallen and fallen? What would be your best advice around helping a young child, or one of our kids, to step up and actually face that fear, even though it seems like they just can't do it? How would you best approach that?
I would say it's actually always the same topic becoming is the modeling, but modeling in a way, yes, it can be ourselves, but something that I noticed with Sophia, so in this age bracket, she has cousins and they are all a bit older than her, but still pretty young, all under 10, or most of them under 10. If she goes with them and they do it all together, then she sees it sees them doing it is the people that she trusts. I think there's a difference between just going to a play center and you have any kids where she has no relationship or connection with. But when she goes with her cousins, let's say at a birthday party, I noticed that she's just so fearless. She just goes with the flow because she's seeing all of the other kids do it. So I guess there's something where maybe it's harder nowadays because we have only one child or maybe two children. Back in the days, we had like big families and they were all together all the time, right? Even myself, I'm like an only child. I'm a good example. Now Sophia's the only child. Hopefully she has some siblings soon. But I guess it's really like, seeing others do it, that they can do it. And then just by visually seeing it, okay, she can do it as well. So that would be one example. And then the other one again is how can I make her feel safe? Really good point what you said before. How can I be there? How can I guide her? How can I challenge her in a certain way? But also not pushing her, not judging her, not putting too much pressure on. And well, that's an interesting balance to find, but I guess it comes back through presence and creating time, and actually having these moments. But if everything is rushed, if we are out of control, we are stressed and worried about work, about the world, about everything, right? And we can't really be there, and then we just rush there. And I'm always watching at the playground or when we go somewhere with like parents, and you sense it from some parents. They have this anxiety within them. Actually, there was a situation yesterday. We were on office works, and this mom and the child were next to us, and she was just very anxious with the child. Do this, and I was sitting next to her. I was feeling anxious just by sitting next to her, and then that was just telling to me that if we are modeling strength, courage, calmness, okay, figuring things out and being consistent with that, then that will translate to our kids. I think that's again the modeling part from us as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I also like the idea of like just challenging them, but not pushing them too far. So if I think about like if we take the example that maybe Sophia or Ezra had tried one obstacle and kept falling off, it's not so much about like pushing them to complete the whole obstacle this time. Maybe it is that they just got to get one step out onto that one platform or that one peg or the one rope or whatever and just step them back so that then they believe they can take the first step rather than them having to think about the whole process as well, because the whole process probably seems like too much for them right now. So it's more about just, oh, hey, let's just do one little thing. And I think about when we were with the rodeos, like calf riding. So they used to put, young kids, once you're a certain age, under a certain weight, you could ride calves. So the potty riding, as they call it here in Australia. I saw a lot of dads that would be like, oh, you've got to get on, you've got to ride. And the kids screaming, they're crying, they don't want to be there because they've been hurt before or they've never done it before. And dad's in there, you've got to do it, you've got to do it. And what I reckon the best way to overcome that, especially if the kid's been hurt and they don't want to do it again, is actually just go right back to the very start, right back to the basics and get them on a nice little, and just get them to sit on the calf in a chute and then get off so they feel comfortable doing that. And then do that a few times and then get a real quiet one where you leave it out and they just walk around. So then they get too used to the idea of walking around on a calf. And then another one is just a little bit more where you let them ride it on their own. And then just move them through the stages where they go back to riding a bucking calf as such, rather than just go on, get back on there, because it's way too scary for them. So stepping them through it step by step. And even if you just get one little win, like, again, go back to like, just get Ezra just to step on the one rope and then back just enough for him to go, oh, this is actually something I can do. And then go back another day and then try some more and build on that. I think that's much, much better, a better way to build it up rather than just throwing them back in the deep end, making them do it again. But I definitely agree with what you say about the kids, with the other kids around, modeling, and I see Ezra doing that. Like he'll see other kids at a park do something and he'll go and try and stuff it as well, try and do that stuff as well, which is great. But what about this though? What about when they go too far? What's your advice around, like, I'll give you an example again. Ezra was standing at the top of the slippery dip or the slide, and normally you sit down and slide on it, and he was going to run. Like, what's your best advice for a parent when your kids, your child's gone too far beyond not seeing something they should be fearful of and potentially going to hurt themselves? I mean, and other things, Ezra gets up real high, he'll try, he'll potentially try and jump off because he for some reason, he just loves jumping off stuff. And then as long as there's something soft, like on our couch, if we've got a mattress in the lounge, he'll jump off that and land on it all the time, right? But what about if they're at the top of the playground and they look like they're going to jump off, or again, any area of life, like they're going to make a decision that is quite dangerous. Like, what's your best advice for helping them realize that it's not a smart move?
Yes, actually, I had a conversation with Tiff last night about it, where I done some self-reflection, thinking I maybe sometimes a bit too easy going, a bit too supportive, and still there, but I think there is like this concept that the kids have to fear their parents. So let's say the father in particular, there has to be a bit of fear and then also fear of consequence, and then comes to the conversation, do you smack your kids? Do you don't smack them? But it doesn't have to be even the smacking, but like some form of punishment, and then because they fear punishment, then they do things or don't do certain things, So something what I'm exploring at the moment, or what we are exploring, where I think for us it's our only child, right? She had all of these house challenges in the beginning of her life, So she's like the princess, and I guess again it's maybe a bit of the social or like something that's happening culturally at the moment, where that's just shifted from, if like we are thinking about our upbringing, and I know it's different for everyone in a certain way, but I would say it was more stricter back in the days. There was a bit more fear, and not sure if it's like violence, if that's the answer, or smacking, but some form of like really having some consequences for certain behaviors. So how that's exactly looking? I mean, you got older kids, maybe you can share your best practices that you had with your two older boys. But for myself, it's something that I'm actually trying to figure out at the moment. How can I be a bit more stricter, because the mom, it's a bit harder for her, to be like that. So I want to be a bit more this person.
Yeah, I think it's a good conversation, and funny you say about the older boys. Like, I guess I don't really remember. Not really sure. Like, nothing pops up to mind. But one thing I do remember, I guess, is like it was more just like a punishment if they did something wrong, or if they, especially if they did something wrong, it was more like I'd just go to the naughty corner or tell them off. But I recognise now that that's not the smartest move, because quite often they don't know why they've been told off, especially, and it's a big problem as I think about it, especially if they're trying something new, like they're trying to get out of their comfort zone, they're trying to stretch their boundaries, or their stretch their confidence. If we're just going straight away tell them off, they then relate, oh, trying something new equals punishment. So then they stop trying new stuff, and then they suppress part of themselves, or they hold back, or they play small, which means that later on in life they start, living in regret because they didn't try more stuff through the fear of being wrong and the fear of being told off. And I guess we were raised that it was wrong to be wrong, but it's not wrong to be wrong, right? It's okay to be wrong in a safe manner. So as I think about it now, it's more about, I'm definitely open to like using a very like assertive voice to stop Ezra doing something, running on the street or jumping off something really high, but then also explaining why, like explaining the consequences, rather than just going, don't do that, you're a friggin' idiot or whatever. It's like, hey, let's not do that, because potentially this is what can happen. And even now, I mean, at 2, he's probably just about old enough to start understanding that. But even just to start explaining it now, so then they start to think and see things as well a little bit differently, rather than just, like I say, don't do that, you're wrong. And I see it so many times, kids getting punished, but they don't know why they're even being punished, really. And they
Yes.
associate it to, especially if they've, like I mentioned, they've tried something new, or, sometimes I think about some kids where they're not allowed to, talk to, they're not allowed to express themselves to mum and dad, or they don't think they can. They finally do, and then they get told off for being a crybaby or something, something as simple as that, which just shuts them down even more. So really, really being open to having that conversation with them in a way that gives them a whole life or a whole event perspective on what's really happening, so that they can understand and think their way through things better, rather than just trying to react.
Yeah, love that. And really about what you said is focusing on what they should do. It's a bit like in general in life. If we're focusing what we don't want, we're getting more of what we don't want. We're focusing on what we want, we get more of what we want. So also for the kids, and I'm really conscious about it. It's actually like a rule that we have at home, and trying to live by that as best as possible. Always like, it's like, if they do something on the table here, saying no, it's not don't climb on the table, just sit on the chair. That would be the
Yeah.
better thing to say. Otherwise, you're focusing, don't sit on the table. they're thinking about sitting on the table, but what we actually want them is to sit on the chair, right? So like really focusing on this positive language and like focusing on what we want them to do, and that's the explanation then. And then of course, we want to do that because that's more safe for you or whatever the explanation is, but really helping them to focusing on positive behavior and then also reinforcing good behavior. I think that's another thing, where we are easy to point out the things they are not doing right. And I think we are all guilty of that for ourselves, that we are our harshest critics, and it usually comes from us. We're saying, and you will have the same, when you work with people and they are like crushing, but when you speak to them, they're bringing up all of the things that they haven't done well. And yes, we want to grow and we want to be better for sure, but it should come from a place of, okay, I'm capable of, I'm confident, here's my track record and here's my next steps to get better. So I think for us, how can we see a bit more our wins and our accomplishments, but also for the kids pointing that out and really over emphasizing when they do something right, and then you don't have to make it a big deal if they do something wrong. It should be short and sharp, and then again focusing on what we actually want to see. And once they do it, then reward. It's a bit like training a dog, I guess. As hard as it sounds, to kids and dogs, but it's the conditioning in a certain way. So.
Yeah, 100% agree about training the dog. They just don't listen. And I think about it sometimes with Ezra. I'll be like trying to teach him something, just not listening. I'm just like, man, this is just like training the working dogs back at home. But I love what you're talking about, and we're actually aware of that as well, about don't say don't, not saying the don't do that, because for listeners who aren't aware, like the unconscious mind does not process negatives. So if you say to the kids, don't run around the swimming pool, or if a teacher says don't talk, all the kids hear is talk. They don't process the don't. They hear the word talk, or they hear the run around the pool, or don't run on the road. They hear run on the road, right? And it's the same as don't stand on the table or don't sit on the table. Is Sophia just hears sit on the table, and Ezra was doing exactly the same thing yesterday, getting up on the table. And I think I probably said to him, don't get on the table, but didn't give him like what we want him to do. So great reminder is like always talk about what we do want them to do versus what we don't want them to do, because they won't process the don't. They'll just hear the it's like an embedded command: sit on the table, run on the road, run around the swimming pool, talk while in class, right? So great reminder about that as well, mate. Very cool, man. Well, last question, I guess, is when you think about the little ones, especially the little ones, like trying to do that new thing. What's your best feedback when they come back and they're really upset? Like they're really, really upset about not getting something right. What's your best feedback? Like, and maybe you haven't seen what they've done or something. They've just come to you and they're really upset. What would be your best way to have that conversation?
Good question. I mean, Sophia is nearly 4, so there is a bit of a conversation, but a bit of empathizing, I guess. But there's also, if they've done something wrong, or like if they're in trouble with mom and they come to me, then I also don't want to be then saying that's okay what you done. Now, it's not okay if mom is not happy with that. So I guess there's something about teamwork, for those guys who are in the relationship and raising the kid together, like really being on the same page there. And again, something about consistency, something about presence, and I don't think it's really about what you say always. It's just the energy about it, right? The more we are there and making them feel safe, be able to process the emotions. I'm not a bloody parenting coach or experts on that, but that's just my understanding. Again, how can we lead with our energy? How can we help them to process all of that stuff? And we know, I mean, in that age, right? It's 1 minute like this, the other minute very different. So it's just helping, and maybe don't take it personally. Maybe that's actually one thing, and maybe that's the bigger thing that I'm just exploring also with tips together. Don't take things personally. When they do it, it's just a toddler brain. It's actually the neurological development. That's the phase that they are in. They don't do this on purpose and be doing that to upset mommy and daddy and to make life hard for them. Not. It's just, part of their development. So to really don't take it personally, and then again comes back to or for us to be in a good physical and mental state of mind, so we are able to support that, and not we being on our wits end and having nothing left, and then the child comes to us and then we explode or reacting in a certain way. they don't take it personally. That's like such a, not just with kids, just in any relationship, I guess. Don't take things too personal.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And that's just being open, really, being open to listen and being present for them. I think it's a big thing. Like if I think about, like you mentioned earlier, back in the old days, it was probably like, oh, just stand up, dust it off, move, hurry up, get over it. But it's not so much about, I notice now I'm not so much about like that. I'm more like being there for him, but not like cuddling him and like showing him that, if you get hurt, this is the only way to get love. It's just like being there, being present, get down to his level, let him work through that emotion of the pain, or if he's in pain, or if he's hurting or whatever. Obviously, physically hurt, I'm going to check that out. But if it's more just an emotional type thing, like let him work through that, and then go back and go if you can work it out or break it down. If then have that conversation about, well, what went wrong, and then how can we improve on that? How can we fix that next time? But I think the main thing is letting them know that you're a safe place to come to when they've got something wrong, because they're going to grow up, they're going to be teenagers, they're going to be around drugs and alcohol and all those other misfits and those other kind of things that could lead them down the wrong path. So we need to let them know that, hey, it's okay if you make a mistake, I'm going to be here, but I'll also help you see the right way as well. And I'm not just going to scold you or punish you. It's more about, you need to know that I'm a safe place, because shit, at the end of the day, if they get something wrong, like drugs and alcohol, the last thing we want them to do is to hide it from us, and
Yeah.
not be open or not feel safe that they can come to us if they find themselves in a bit of a trouble and stuff like that. So I think it's really important.
Yes. Awesome
Very cool,
session. We rocked it without
mate.
Quang, who's usually doing the preparation and the question and the structure. Just
You know what I reckon? He just uses Chat GPT, mate, like like we were going to.
that's his voice, actually. I think when he's on the podcast, that's actually ChatGPT talking. I actually don't think it's him.
Yeah, we don't see his lips moving, so. Very cool, mate. Very cool. Great conversation. Absolutely 100% agree. So we've got some ideas for next week. We might talk about, I don't think Quang's here next week either. So we'll jump into the mid-year goals, or the mid-year goal breakdown, and checking in on the momentum or the recalibration of mid-year goals, because I think it's a really key thing to think about now that we are right into the start of July as of this week as well. So for those of you who've caught up, great to catch you here on DadBods, DadBoss. We will be back same time next week. Until then, what do we normally say? DadBods, DadBoss. Checking out.
Check out.